At 9:17 a.m. on January 22, 1943, the officers of the 132nd Infantry Regiment were laughing. They weren't laughing at the Japanese snipers who had just butchered 14 of their men in 3 days. They were laughing at 2nd Lieutenant John George's toy. George, a 27-year-old Illinois state shooting champion, sat in the mud of Guadalcanal clutching a Winchester Model 70. It was a civilian hunting rifle he'd bought with 2 years of National Guard pay. It had a Lyman Alaskan scope and a mail-order reputation that made his commanding officer, Captain Morris, sneer. "Is that for deer or Germans?" the armorer had asked back in Tennessee. "It's for the Japanese," George had replied. By the time George reached Point Cruz, the laughter had died. The Japanese snipers in the banyan groves weren't just soldiers, they were invisible executioners. They sat 90 feet up in trees with trunks 8 feet thick, picking off Americans filling canteens or walking trails they'd passed a dozen times. The battalion commander, desperate in facing a mounting body count, finally looked at George and his sporting rifle. "Can that mail-order sweetheart actually hit anything?" George didn't argue. He just cited his record. 1939 Illinois state champion, the youngest in history, capable of 4-inch groups at 300 yards. The commander gave him until dawn. George spent the night cleaning cosmoline out of the Winchester's action. He wasn't using military ball ammo. He had packed 60 rounds of .30-06 hunting ammunition from home. At dawn, he crawled into a ruined bunker overlooking the groves. The jungle is never truly quiet, but George filtered it out. He glassed the trees through the 2.5x scope, a magnification so low his peers mocked it, but enough to catch the one thing the human eye misses: unnatural movement. At 9:17 a.m., a branch shifted. There was no wind. Through the scope, George saw him, a Japanese sniper, 240 yards away, perched in a fork of a banyan tree. George adjusted 2 clicks for wind. The trigger was a glass-smooth 3.5 pounds. He squeezed. The Winchester barked. 240 yards away, the sniper tumbled 90 feet to the jungle floor. 1 shot, 1 kill. But Japanese snipers worked in pairs. George waited. At 9:43 a.m., he spotted the second man, the spotter, trying to slide down a trunk 60 yards north of the first. George led the movement and fired. The second sniper fell backwards. 2 shots, 2 dead. By noon, the toy rifle had claimed 5 lives. The men who had mocked George now wanted to watch him work. He sent them away. "Spectators draw fire," he grunted. He was right. On January 23rd, the Japanese adapted. They realized an American ghost was hunting their own. After George's 6th kill at 290 yards, the Japanese responded with mortars. They triangulated his muzzle flash and bracketed the bunker. George sprinted 120 yards north, seconds before his original position vanished in a geyser of debris. This was no longer a shooting gallery, it was a high-stakes duel. George relocated to a fallen tree and took out his 7th and 8th targets. The 8th sniper had climbed nearly 100 feet up, but as the sun shifted, his silhouette betrayed him against the tropical sky. By the morning of January 24th, only 3 of the original 11 Japanese snipers remained. These were the elites, the survivors. They knew George's face, his rifle, and his habits. George set up in a cluster of rocks 70 yards from his last position. At 8:17 a.m., he found number 9. He was low in a palm tree, only 40 feet up. It was an easy shot. Something felt wrong. It was too obvious. He spent 11 minutes glassing the surrounding area instead of pulling the trigger. He found the truth 80 yards northwest, a 10th sniper, perfectly concealed, watching the very spot George would have to expose himself to shoot the bait in the palm tree. George played the game. He shot the decoy, then instantly swung his rifle to the banyan tree. As the real sniper turned toward the sound of the first shot, George caught the movement and fired. 2 shots, 2 more kills. But the 11th man, the deadliest, was still out there. George realized his mistake. He assumed the last sniper was in the trees. He wasn't. At 9:47 a.m., George saw movement in his peripheral vision. A shape was crawling through the ferns on the jungle floor, flanking him. George was in a water-filled shell crater. He submerged himself until only his eyes and the muzzle of his Winchester were above the muddy surface. He watched as the 11th sniper reached the rocks George had just vacated. The Japanese soldier was searching for an escape route, but he was looking the wrong way. At 38 yards, George rose like a wraith from the water. 1 shot to the center mass. The 11th sniper was dead. The groves were clear. George's 4-day tally was 11 snipers with 12 rounds. But as he climbed out of the crater, he heard voices, a Japanese recovery patrol. With only 5 rounds in his rifle and his pack lost in the mud, George faced 6 infantrymen. He killed 3 at the rim of the crater before breaking contact and sprinting through the undergrowth. He reached the American perimeter with 2 rounds left in his chamber. The mockery was over. Colonel Ferry, the regimental commander, didn't file a report on George's unauthorized rifle. Instead, he asked one question: "Can you teach others?" George's mail-order rifle became the blueprint for a new doctrine. He was given 14 salvaged Springfield rifles and 40 expert marksmen. In just 12 days, George's new sniper section recorded 74 confirmed kills with 0 American casualties. John George would eventually be wounded in February, but his war didn't end on Guadalcanal. He would go on to join the legendary Merrill's Marauders in Burma, carrying his Winchester Model 70 into the darkest jungles of the theater. He proved that in the hands of a master, a toy isn't measured by its military serial number, but by the silence it leaves behind.